types of information combined. So when you're developing your project, these are three primary questions that you have to ask yourself. Which is the priority? In what sequence do you gather the information? And at what point do you combine the information? All right? Any questions at this point? Yes?
About qualitative and quantitative, we will collect the data, and then the data for qualitative and this data for quantitative. About the participant or respondent, Ibu mohon dibantu Bu. Apakah responden atau partisipan tadi untuk kuali dan kuanti bisa bersama-sama atau wajib beda?
It depends. There is no absolute right way or wrong way. It depends on what you're trying to do. So in some cases, it would make absolute sense. It would be a good strategy to have the people who are in your quantitative survey also come and participate in your focus group and your interviews. Why would that be the case? So if you collect a survey and you're wanting to understand people's attitudes about mental health and mental health seeking, you find out from the survey that there is a lot of stigma associated with mental health services. And you don't know why, you just, from your survey, you see that the stigma is very high. You take those same participants, a few of them, and then you come and say, please, let's have a focus group. Tell me, what are the things that contribute to stigma and mental illness, all right? And you get more information from there. So there's an example of when it would make very good sense to have them be the same people. Other times, there would not be a good idea to have them be the same people. Why? Because you're wanting to know, I got some information from you about how to design my program for diet and exercise. You provided surveys and focus group information to me, and I made changes. Now, sometimes it makes sense to ask them again, did we get it right? But other times it makes sense now to go to the community, to new groups of people who have not seen the information before, and say, tell me, what is your opinion about this intervention? Do you like the information? Is it clear to you? All right? So there are times when you have the same participants, and there are times when you have different participants. Okay? Does that answer your question? Yeah, okay. All right. So, first thing that we're going to, so just to remind us, we're talking about priority, sequence, and then integration. So, first thing is that we're going to do is we're going to talk about the priority. So when we think about the priority, there are three different approaches. Quant, where qualitative is the primary priority. When is this used? This is when the research is exploratory. When you don't know a lot about the phenomenon, then you use the strength of qualitative research to help gather some ideas in which then you might use to develop a survey, right? The priority is on the qualitative methodology. Why? Because we don't have a lot of information. The second priority could be quantitative, followed by qualitative. That's when we are trying to explain experience. So for example, when we may have learned from our qualitative focus groups about the role of family attitudes on mental health treatment seeking. Now we might want to, and we have some hypotheses, now we might want to do a larger focus on some focus groups individuals to better understand that. And then when they're equal, that's called triangulation. Triangulation, when you have an equal priority on finding a lot of information using quantitative approaches and a lot of information using qualitative. Meaning triangulation is combining sources from multiple places to try to understand. Right? So priority, is your priority qualitative, quantitative, or equal? That's the first question you must ask yourself in mixed methods. All right? The second is, what sequence will you conduct the research in? So there are 4 sequences. The first is convergent. It's also known as parallel or concurrent. There's sequential. There's embedded or nested. And then there's multi-phase. This is the sequences in which you can collect your data. This does not mean anything about the priority of quantitative over qualitative. You can collect qualitative first, but still have quantitative be your priority, okay? So the sequence does not say anything about priority. Can you translate that for me? Because I want to make sure they understand that point. That your priority is, whether it's quantitative or qualitative, it's very different concept from the sequence in which you collect the data. Meaning, your earlier question, the sequence, which do you collect first? Is it clear or not yet?
Menerjemahkan sedikit. Jadi ini ada beberapa urutan, tapi urutan ini tidak berarti menggambarkan mana yang lebih penting dari yang duluan, gitu ya. Jadi bisa dikerjakan dulu, tapi tidak berarti itu lebih penting daripada yang kemudian. Ya, dan itu harus dipahami dulu, Prof. Alicia, harus jelas. Ya, jadi tidak bergantung pada urutan mengerjakannya, berarti yang duluan lebih penting, gitu ya.
It's clear? All right, they're separate. Okay. All right, so here are 4 sequences. Parallel, sequentials, embedded, multiphase. Let's talk about each of these. Convergent. Another name for convergent is parallel. Happening like this, all right? Parallel. Okay? So, research collects both quantitative and qualitative data, right? And combines the information. So this happens, the data collection happens at the same time, parallel, right? And it is constantly being combined to better understand what's happening, right? So happening at the same time. This is one sequence, collecting both qualitative and quantitative at the same time. All right? So, quantitative, qualitative, combine those and you get your results, right? It happens at the same time. Convergent or parallel. Here's an example of a type of study that I did in the past that used parallel or convergent design. This is a study when we first were able to test for the breast cancer gene, BRCA1 and 2. And what we noticed is that African Americans were far less likely to go in for testing, even though they had all the risk factors for the genetic mutation. And so they asked me to come to use a mixed methods approach to understand some of the reasons why. So, first thing that we did is we recruited them for the focus groups. Prior to the focus groups, they filled out surveys for us. Then, as soon as they were done, we went to the next room and we had the qualitative data collection. So, same time, right? Parallel. It was very interesting what we found. In the focus groups, people said, no, we should not, African Americans should not participate in this type of genetic testing, is because they will use this information against us, and it's like research, like bad things that have happened to African Americans in the United States in the past. So no, we do not think this is a good idea for African Americans. I thought, oh boy, okay, we have a big problem, because this is new medical technology, right? People saving people's lives. So then we went and I analyzed the survey. Would you be willing to have a genetic test? Oh yes. Do you think it's a good thing? Well, for me, my mother had breast cancer, her mother had breast cancer. Yes, for me it's a good thing. Which of those sources of information were true? What I heard in the focus group, or what I heard from the survey? Both. Tell me how.
For the quantitative, the survey that you did, just give like short answers. But when you go to the focus group for the qualitative, we can get deeper or richer information about the data, which is maybe so correlated to the one.
Yes, that was a part of what was happening. Anyone else have any ideas what might have been happening in this situation? How in the qualitative they said, no way, terrible for the African American community. But in the quantitative data, it said, yes, I will take this test. Yes.
I mean exercise.
Okay, go.
Thank you for the opportunity. My opinion, maybe because in the quantitative, in the survey that you did, basically, personally, they want to take the test. Personally, they need to take the test, and it's very advantageous for them. But they also have the obligation for their social, for their community. So they're willing to, but they cannot do because the obligation for their community. I think that's why the qualitative need for understanding. By personally, they need to, but why don't they take the test?
Yes,
That's my opinion.
that's great. That was essentially the interpretation, is that at an individual level, I have the risk factors, it is right for me. But my community, the researchers have done such bad things to African Americans that we have to be very, very careful. So essentially, they were answering two separate questions. What is right for the African American community versus what is right for me? And if we had only had the surveys, we would have only part of the story. If we had the focus groups, we would have only had part of the story. We needed both. And so what we did is that we developed the information materials and training for people that talked about the things that have happened in the past and how we were protecting the Black community and how this was good for individual as well as the community. So we took both information and came up with that intervention. But yes, that's as an example of collecting it concurrently and how the information together told us the right story. All right? All right, now sequential. This is having one data set build upon the next. It does not say anything about priority. It says you collect one type of data, you analyze that data, So one approach is to collect the qualitative data to help explain in more detail the mechanisms, and then follow up again with a second line of quantitative research. All right, so sequentially, you find some information, you analyze it, you do quantitative to try to understand how common are these answers, and then you follow up again, maybe with qualitative again. So sequentially, one after another. But you're answering the same question, okay? The data sets build on each other, but you're still answering the same research question. This is important because this is different from multi-phase, which is going to look like this, but the difference between sequential and multi-phase is that in sequential, all the data is still within one research question. Okay? All right, so this is what it looks like. Phase 1, explore the topic. Phase 2, develop an intervention. Phase 3, sort of testing the intervention. All right, so here's another example of using that. HIV positive individuals are more likely to be smoking. People who, HIV is common for HIV? HIV individuals are more likely to smoke cigarettes, but about 10 years ago, we found that smoking decreases the effectiveness of HIV medication. So we were trying very hard to work on helping people who are HIV positive stop smoking. So the first thing that we did was that we collected the qualitative information about why they were smoking, what were some of the barriers and facilitators to smoking cessation. We took that information, we developed materials that, for smoking cessation, that included HIV-specific knowledge and the barriers and facilitators that we had learned from the focus groups. We also got some more feedback. And then third phase is we tested the intervention. So we were still answering the exact same question, but using different approaches. Okay, so here's a summary of the 3 designs. Convergent, learn, have 2 sources to compare, to contrast, to validate. Remember study 1, when I compared the qualitative to the survey, the qualitative to the survey, that was convergent. Explanatory sequential design. First explaining, following up, getting more in depth, and then trying to understand the mechanism, right? And then 3, explanatory sequential design. This is the design is when you're trying to develop an intervention or to design an intervention, okay? These are the types of designs that you would use based on what you're trying to do. Any questions about the priorities or the designs?
Is there any question up to this? Yes? Okay.
Okay, thank you for the challenge. My name is Tribudiati. I'm a doctoral student at Faculty of Nursing. I would like to ask about how apply the mixed method in action research, and what kind of the design that appropriate for the action research, action research.
What type of research?
Action research. Action. As we know, the key of the action research is the participation of the participants and also the respondents. And as we know, there's a difference about the methodology of quantitative and also qualitative about the
action research? Ah, okay. Great question.
Okay, just one question first, and then you answer, and then we go to the other question.
Okay. So participatory action research is a framework in terms of how you work in collaboration with your participants or the community that you're interested in. That is your overarching philosophy of how you will conduct your research, essentially in partnership. That is separate from a mixed method approach. You can apply participatory action research to mixed methods in the sense of, but you still have to ask yourself the same things that we have been talking about. What is my research question? What is already known? What am I trying to do? To understand, to explore, or to intervene? Those questions you still have to ask yourself, but you ask them in partnership. Each of your steps is guided in partnership, but is conducted in partnership, but is still guided by those three primary questions. What is already known? What am I trying to do, right? And how am I going to use the information, right? So they're not mutually exclusive. Some people will use community-based participatory research, right? And still have that philosophy that in order to fully understand and to fix a problem, we must work in partnership with our participants, right? That's a philosophy that surrounds your methods. It doesn't necessarily influence your methods. It's just an approach that surrounds that. Does that make sense? Yeah? Yeah, that's true. Should we translate? Yeah, we should translate.
Yeah, I think this is for my understanding ya. Jadi yang dijelaskan itu adalah yang pertama itu yang penting adalah menjawab research questionnya apa. Dan ada 3 pertanyaan dasar tadi. Apa yang sudah diketahui dari topik tersebut, kemudian apa yang akan dilakukan. Tadi ada 3? I forgot. Ya ada 3. Ini bagaimana melakukannya. Ini adalah 3 pertanyaan yang mendasari. Yang pertama itu adalah research questionnya, yang dibilang tadi mutually atau eksklusif sebelum menentukan metodenya tadi, yaitu tadi action research atau kalau menurut Phoenix itu participatory research namanya, ya, atau keterlibatan responden, partnership. Action research you translate it, or you I think you use another terminology for the action research, which is participatory research or partnership.
Yes.
Jadi begitu. So really based on the research question first. Ya. Gimana? Putri?
It seems unsatisfactory. Let's try
Yeah.
again.
You know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Try again. We'll try again. Yeah.
Bagaimana yang masih perlu menjelaskan? Oke, bahasa Indonesia dulu.
I'm still in my mind. The actual research is we must the participation of the respondent or the participant. We we use the participation of the participants at the start and collecting data after and in the end until the intervention. And at the mixed method, when the qualitative, we need just when I just need 10 participants because we are already have saturation. The data is already saturation. We just use 10 participants, but at the quantitative method, we need more samples for the respondents at the same samples. So it's okay when the qualitative we just need 10 participants at the action research, and the quantitative we need maybe participants at the community, at the same community that used in their actual research. Can you get my explanation?
Tell me, let's start this way. Tell me what's your research question?
Because I use the mixed method, there is some questions about my research question is about how build some models, how build some models to breastfeeding mothers related to the culture. So I use two method, mixed method, quantitative and also qualitative method. At the first, I use qualitative method to explore I have to explore assessment, to assess and to explore what mothers need after the postpartum period, especially for mother after cesarean section. And after that, I built some models. Besides the result of qualitative, and also some
We might have to talk a little bit afterwards so that I can have more time to understand the point of it.
I don't know, maybe Phoenix. I think,
Okay.
yeah, I think
Yes.
the issue here, what is the position of mixed method or the position of participatory research under this topic about mixed method? So we come up maybe like a clear differentiation, clear difference between the two.
So community-based participatory research is not a methodology. It's a philosophy. It's an approach to how you feel about the input and the relative importance of the voice from the community. That's a philosophy. It's not a methodology. You can use action research with qualitative only, or just surveys only, or mixed methods. All of it, it's just a way that you approach the research question regardless of the methodology. So it's almost like a theory. It's outside of the methodology. It's a philosophy, a way of approaching the research.
Yeah, I think that would clarify, because this is about, I mean, if before we go further and further about this question, really the position of mixed method and participatory research, and I think Tony already described about it. Is it okay? Yeah? Well, anyway, Punic is still 2 weeks ago.
We can talk many more times, yes.
Okay, now we can, excuse me, Punic, maybe we can go to your question first? Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, Miss Alicia, thank you very much. You forced me so I can speak, I can improve my conversation in here. Yeah, you know, I come from East Timor. You know East Timor?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm Atambua. West Timor. I'm curious. Yeah, the first month in here, first semester for first month. Yeah, this topic is new for me, and sometimes whenever follow your materials, I not imagine about how to analyze the data from the qualitative